been struck this evening, starting with Tim Johnson's letter and then subsequently by the language used by the panelists, how often the word consumers is used. And I'm wondering what the perception would be, how it might change if we substitute the word citizens instead of consumers. Thank you.
That's excellent. That was something that occurred to me. We've been talking a lot about the internet in the light of commerce, okay? Consumers and commerce. Let's talk a little bit about why we might be concerned about net neutrality from the perspective of the internet as a big system for democratizing information. Maybe the most fantastic system we've ever seen for that. And Professor, maybe I'll start with you on that.
Give him a job.
Status just keeps going up.
Our academic representative. Yeah. Well, why are we concerned about it from not from a consumer perspective or a commerce perspective, but from a democratization of information perspective?
Yeah, I think that this is an excellent point, and I think it's true that we too easily slip into this language of consumers and users of the internet. I've always had a problem with that term user. It sounds like something nefarious. But it really is about citizen access to our media system, which I'll try not to slip into too many cliches, but it really is the lifeblood of our democracy. And so as soon as we start talking in terms of restricting access, which removing net neutrality would essentially do, then we're no longer just talking about pipes and wires, or as Senator Ted Stevens would say, a series of tubes. We're really talking about democratic discourse, and this really raises the stakes, especially when we start to consider what's going to happen in the next few years, where increasingly through convergence, we're going to have not only the internet, we're going to have television, we're going to have telephone, we're going to have radio, all coming down through one pipe. And it's going to be controlled by one corporate giant, most likely. And to go back earlier to what was mentioned, and it's been mentioned a few times this evening, this idea of competition, that is exactly why net neutrality and losing it is such a dire situation to be in, because most markets are not competitive at all. At best, they're duopolistic, which means they may have one big DSL provider and one big cable provider. If they're lucky, they might have a third-party provider, but that's not. I mean, statistically, that's just not very likely. A lot of Americans are actually in monopolistic markets. Some don't have access to broadband at all. So when we're framing it up as access to a democratic medium, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that the internet is one of the most, if not the most, democratic medium we've ever seen on the planet. That it really raises the stakes, and I think it's important to frame it not as are we going to regulate the internet, and that is something we should talk about more later as well. This idea of deregulation, that I think needs to be debunked. But I'll stop there for now.
Well, just to put some numbers out on the table, about 53%, I believe, of the markets, of the households in the U.S. are covered by more than one provider, and a remaining, I think it's 28%, are covered by only one internet provider, and the remainder don't have access to internet. I think the 28 number is a little high, actually. I think it's lower than that, because it's 19% that don't have access to broadband internet at all. But the claim that a duopoly is not effective competition needs to be backed up. In every market where there's a cable provider and a phone provider, both of those people are going towards providing all services over one line. The vast majority of the telephone company's money comes from phone lines. Every time a cable subscriber gets to cancel their phone line, that is a direct attack on the phone company's pocketbook. everything I've seen in every market that I've looked in, and I've looked in a lot, it shows really quite cutthroat competition. You don't see price competition in the cable industry because they've decided to differentiate themselves as the premium provider of internet service. They have higher maximum speeds, and since you get TV, it looks prettier, I guess. But you do see, because they position themselves as the premium provider, the DSL providers position themselves as the low-cost provider. And so you have DSL for $12.99 a month introductory, and I think it goes up to $20 a month when you stay with them for 3 months or something like that. And I don't, I guess I'll pass it back to those guys to tell me why that's not competition. It looks like competition to me.
I'd like to build that. We know too much that from the past, a very wise man once said, the only thing we do not know of the future is what we forget in the past. If you look back at the telecoms and the reason why we had regulation for so many years, because power gets abused. Absolute power gets abused, absolutely. And that's what AT&T and Comcast and all these people want out of this, is they want absolute power over this. That's why they want it mandated by the federal government and not by the locals, the way it is today. We cannot trust these people to have competition. Would you? When you could get together in a hotel room, a nice one, in Chicago or New York, or the Bahamas, or a bottle of Dom Perignon, and say, here's the pie, in dollars. How much do you want? How much do we get? And all we had to do is a little bit of collusion, and we can raise this price to whatever we want it to be. Right? Wouldn't you? So would they. Thank you.